Okay. Normally we read a section of the chapter a day, which that's not going to happen because we're heading into 14.4. And 14.4 is a very long section. So you're going to divide that up, reading up over the next 2-3 days. I'm only going to do the video today, but I don't expect you to read all of it today because it's a lot. Let me look at my lesson plans here real quick. Yeah, you'll read it Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then Friday you'll take a quiz. The quiz is just over 14.4. It'll be an open book quiz. So, pause me, get your history book, and open up to 153. By now, everybody should have their history books out, open to page 153. If not, pause me again and get it. Page 153, we're going to start with the tan box. I am not going to read the entire thing to you, but I am going to read the tan box to you, following along, and then I'll add some comments. Over the centuries, certain families have risen to prominence in business, politics, and other areas of life. Think the Medici family of the Italian Renaissance. The name Habsburg, one such family is the Habsburgs, who were prominent in European politics for almost 900 years. The name Habsburg is derived from a castle in Switzerland. First member of the family to use the name was Werner I, who became known as the Count of Habsburg. Habsburg family remained feudal rulers until 1273, when Rudolph I was chosen to be a Holy Roman Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire, which, remember, is not holy or Roman or an empire. We're talking the church and all of that. 1273, we're still in the Dark Ages, when Rudolph was chosen to be the Holy Roman Emperor. Upon his death, one of his sons, Rudolph II, fitting we're talking about Rudolph as we're heading to Christmas, but anyway, upon his death, one of his sons, Rudolph II, inherited part of his father's domain. This inheritance eventually became known as Austria, which, look back at the map. Austria isn't pictured there, but it does tell you Austria borders Switzerland. So if you kind of look back, you can kind of guess where it would be there. In 1452, Frederick III, another Habsburg, was crowned Holy Roman Emperor. His election began a custom of Habsburg emperors that would continue until 1711. So we're getting into time periods here that hopefully is a little more modern and a little more things that maybe you recognize some of it, than maybe some of the stuff we've talked about before now. For almost 300 years, the Holy Roman emperors were Habsburg. Frederick adopted his motto, I'm going to skip through the Latin, which means Austria is destined to rule the world, which obviously never happened. The Habsburg took this motto very seriously. Maximilian I, Frederick III's son, became emperor in 1493. So we're now getting even closer to modern times here, that with things that maybe you have heard of. Because remember, in 1492, Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue. So this is a year after Christopher Columbus that Maximilian becomes emperor. Maximilian increased the Habsburg holdings tremendously by marriage. Not unusual for kingdoms to unite and become bigger through marriage. As a result of these marriages, the Habsburgs gradually acquired the lands of other kingdoms. Maximilian I married Mary of Burgundy, and their son Philip I inherited the Netherlands and Luxembourg. To further increase Habsburg property, Maximilian arranged for Philip to marry Joanna, who is the daughter of Ferdinand and Isabella. Remember, Ferdinand and Isabella of Spain are the king and queen that sent out Christopher Columbus in 1492. So their daughter, Joanna, married Philip to increase the size of this family's holdings. Through this marriage, the Habsburg acquired Spain, Naples, Sicily, and the island of Sardinia. Many Europeans began to say, "Let others wage wars, you, fortunate Austria, marry." Because Philip I died prematurely in 1506, his son Charles succeeded Maximilian as Archduke of Austria. In 1519, Charles V was elected Holy Roman Emperor. With his election, Charles controlled Germany, Austria, Spain, several Italian kingdoms, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg. Big area. But as the modern age continued, the Habsburg lost their domains by one until only Austria remained. So now jumping back up to Europe in the 17th century, 14.4. Europe in the 16th century, that would mean that the 17th century, that would mean the 1600s. So this whole long section of 14.4 is going to literally like jump around Europe. And it's basically going to be kind of a very quick hop, skip, jump through Europe of what's going on in each one of these countries in the 1600s, who the leaders are, and also where they fall after the Protestant Reformation. Are they Catholic or are they Protestant? And if they're Protestant, which type of Protestantism? Because you've got the Calvinism and Lutheranism and all these other denominations under the Protestant title. You've also got some wars going on. You've got some countries that are neutral. So we're going to kind of skip around, doing a very, very, very quick little snapshot of a lot of European countries. You're going to start with Switzerland. Switzerland, just going to hit kind of the high points. When you think Switzerland, think neutral. They, of course, had their wars. You see the pretty picture there, the Swiss Alps. Page 154 in bold is 1499, when Switzerland won its complete independence from the Holy Roman Empire. 1513, Swiss defeated the French. 2 years later, Swiss suffered a great number of casualties in a battle with the French. After that, they decided to be a country of a policy of national neutrality. That's very important to remember, because it started in the 1500s, but Switzerland being neutral continued all the way through history till you get up to World War II. Switzerland was one of very few European countries that stayed neutral. And one of the main cities in Switzerland is Geneva. And it's in Geneva that the Geneva Convention was signed. And the Geneva Convention is the rules of war that most countries agree to follow. And one of the things that comes out of that, I don't know if it's in this chapter or not, but one of the things that comes out of the Geneva Convention and all of this is the Red Cross, the International Red Cross, which says that it doesn't matter what country you're from. Once you're wounded, whoever can help you can help you. So, if I always think of the show MASH. I like the show MASH. And there was one episode there's a couple of episodes actually, that the gung-ho patriotic G.I. Joe doctor wants to heal all the Americans first. And the doctor, who could care less about being in the army, is like, no, we've got to follow the Geneva Convention. The worst wounded, whether he's Chinese, North Korean, South Korean, or American, is the one that gets healed first. Then next you talk about the Netherlands, which is the most confusing country just because they go by so many blasted names. The Netherlands is also known as Holland. The people that live there is known as Hollanders or as the Dutch. Not at all confusing. There's not a whole lot about them, but there is some, so you'll read it. Then you'll read about France. We don't spend a lot of time on them because some of it's review of what we've already learned, and then we'll spend a lot of time on France in future chapters. Scandinavia, 3 kindred kingdoms. The region known as Scandinavia includes the country of Norway, Sweden, and Denmark. Then if you throw in Finland and Iceland, it's called the Norden people, or the Norden countries. Talk about the Vikings. We already talked about them some. Denmark. Then you talk about Spain. You spend a lot of time on Spain. Remember when we learned about the Muslims that came in and took over Spain? That group was known as the Moors. So you'll talk a little bit about the Moors when you talk about Spain. And then you'll talk about how it eventually changes from the Moors having the control to Spain becomes a very Catholic country. And Spain being a Catholic country is going to play a huge role in future events in history and even in American history. With the Spanish Armada and all that, which you get to at the very end. Then you talk about Portugal. Portugal is very interesting. Tiny little country there beside Spain, but it's the one that led in navigation for a while. Then it ends with talking about state churches. As we study post-Reformation Europe, we see that in the major countries on the European continent, the Protestant Reformation either failed or else it brought established Protestant churches controlled by the government. So while the Protestant Reformation made changes as far as the church, one thing it did not get rid of was this fact that the church and the government are tied together. Now you just have the Catholic countries with the Catholic Church and the government tied together, or you have Protestant countries with the government and the Protestant churches tied together. With little or no toleration for dissenters. And this is going to play a huge role in American history, because this is the beginning of this idea that the king or queen or whoever the leader of the country is decides what kind of religion that country is going to have. And so that's one of the things that's what a lot of the settlers of the New World were trying to escape. And this goes all the way back to this time period we're talking about right here. The 1600s. This is the time period we're talking about. The state church concept eventually produced cold, formal Protestant churches in which belief and practice stemmed from the dictates of government rather than the free choice of congregations in the light of their understanding of the Bible. There were a few somewhat brighter spots, such as the Netherlands, where people achieved a level of religious freedom. But for a more complete fulfillment of the Reformation, we must look away from the continent and study in detail the history of England. So that's where we're going to next, is chapter 15, which we'll start with on Monday. We're going to look at England and how England handled the Protestant Reformation, which was quite interestingly. So this is basically the last video from me for the rest of the week. This is the way the rest of the week is going to go. It's up to you. You kind of decide how you want to divide it up. You're going to read all of 14.4. By Friday, you should have finished reading chapter 14. If you're behind on reading 14:1, 2, 3, it's up to you how you catch it up. By Friday, you should have all of chapter 14 read. On Friday, you will have a quiz on 14.4. It will be an open book quiz. You will continue to do simple solutions. Today's Wednesday, so you'll do simple solutions 61 today and check it. Thursday, you'll do simple solutions 62 and check it. Friday, you won't have a simple solutions. So that is this week, and I will see you next week.